A quick video on the configuration of the SP500 application. Let's assume that you've watched some of the other videos on the SP500 analyzer on how to use it from the Polaris investing YouTube channel. So to start off with, we're going to go over here to the manage worksheet, and we're going to be talking specifically about these well, any box you see that's got a gray background is a box that you could select something from to do some configuration. But in this video, we're going to be talking specifically about these three here. I'll go ahead and put them in a little bit darker gray. And also going to be talking about these two down here, and this one here, and also this one here, and then these two over here. So for a total of 9 different specific boxes that we'll be talking about. The other ones are fairly detailed, more for diagnostics reasons. If there's some problem with the spreadsheet, you've called the help desk to get assistance, they would possibly have you try some of these other configuration things to help them troubleshoot the problem with you. But just for normal configuration, these are the 9 main values that you would possibly change. So start off with here the C3. This cell has to do with highlighting the smallest and largest. So let's just use it easy to see what we're talking about here. Is if we turn that on, they go over here. You can see here that in the S&P 500 portion of the spreadsheet, we're now seeing in column N both the smallest, which is a little bit lighter orange value that's being displayed, and then a darker orange is the largest value. Same thing over here in the heat map or the industry or the segment portion of the spreadsheet. Same thing, the highest segment in the or sector and the lowest sector. And then here in the current displayed watch list is the highest value and lowest value in terms of in this column here. So if I come back over and turn that off, you'll see quickly how that has changed, that you no longer see any kind of orange on the screen. Now it also applies to the industry tab as well, highest and lowest here in column N and column AD. All right, the next configuration parameter I want to talk about has to do with highlighting tickers that are also in your watch list. So if we turn this on and come over here to the S&P 500, you see here that now we see in blue if the tickers that you've selected in your watch list happen to be currently displayed over here in the S&P 500 portion, they'll turn blue, and then also they're blue over here, so you can quickly find where they are in the S&P 500 portion. So if I go back and turn that off, you'll see here that the blue disappears. And since there is no watch list on the industry worksheet, there is no change in functionality by changing this configuration parameter around. The next one has to do with the number of items or rows in the S&P 500 portion, and that's shown right here. And by default, it will show 50 rows. Now you can grab the handle down here, which is shown in other videos, and you can extend down and show more than just 50, the top 50. You can show the top any number you want to see. But when you save off the spreadsheet, it'll truncate back to 50, assuming that that was a temporary extension that you did. So if you wanted to make it a more permanent extension, you need to go out here and change the number of rows that you would want to keep around every time you close off the spreadsheet. Now it assumes that you did grab the handle and filled the rows down to that number of rows, but again, this has to do with when you eventually close the spreadsheet off and reopen it. If you want to have more rows stay around or persist from closing and reopening, you would change it there. All right, the next parameter, it has to do with whether you show an annualized return or an absolute return in the price change column. So here, what we're doing now is based on the previous date. We're just looking at an absolute change. I mean, typically you're only looking back, one day or the previous closing day or maybe 1 week. Absolute change in value is what you typically want to see. But if you were to go back years back in time, it may be more appropriate to show this change in an annualized change. And same thing over here, and that applies also in the industry worksheet as well. So to get an annualized, you would change this to on. The next value we want to talk about has to do with whether you want to display the market cap or price change in the this column here, whether you're showing whether that's a percent of the overall market cap of the SP 500 portion that you're currently showing. So for example, Microsoft, we're just saying that based on the most recent price that it represents 7.7% of the market cap of the 50 stocks that are being shown from the top 50 of the S&P 500. If you wanted to see what the percent change was, like here Microsoft only changed 0.05% for this particular day we're looking at, but another stock could have changed much more than that. Like here's one that changed 0.89%. So even if it has much lower market cap, it could have a little more higher significance in terms of how much it influenced the overall change in the top 50 stocks. So if you wanted to see more of the total price change impact percent versus just the market cap percent, you could change it here. The default is simply market cap. How much does the Microsoft, for example, represent price times outstanding shares, represent relative to all the other stocks that make up the top 500, and doesn't factor in the actual price change that you're currently looking at. All right, the next value up here has to do with opting in or out in terms of having some minimal information captured when the spreadsheet first opens. This has to do with getting an idea of how broadly the spreadsheet's being used. Also helps with the evolution of the spreadsheet in terms of knowing how broadly the spreadsheet is used. But if you prefer not to have any information relayed back in terms of IP address or username associated with the spreadsheet, you can choose to opt out. This parameter in cell D6 has to do with whether you get a reminder pop-up to help you use the spreadsheet. So for example, if you're over here in the SP 500 and you do a refresh, it'll come up and just remind you when you need to do a refresh, things like that. And you'll get other reminders along the way. But if you wouldn't want that reminder to come up, you could, or have that assistance while you're using the spreadsheet, you could turn that off. All right, the next one is here in H1, and this has to do with whether you highlight rows or not. So when I turn it on, and now I come over here and I click a ticker, you'll notice here that the row that clicker or that ticker is in is all highlighted. Same thing over here for a sector or for a ticker in the watch list, and also applies here in the industry worksheet as well. To turn off, you just simply go to another one and come back, and it toggles it off and on if you don't want to have anything, or if you just move around, it'll then highlight the next one. You can also go up to like up here and click, and because that's not that's a column heading, it'll turn off it. But so multiple ways to get it highlighted and then not highlighted again. Again, you can do here, click somewhere else in the spreadsheet, come back, and it toggles it off. Okay, so if you turn that off, you'll see that now when you go back on any of these tabs, that it won't highlight when you click. All right, the last one we want to talk about here is has to do with save and delete. There's a whole video on saving and deleting watch lists. This just is a reminder of how you get that feature shown in the here on the SP 500 worksheet. And so what we're looking at here is in cell U17, you get now a gray box of which you can select, save, and delete. And if I go back and turn this off, you'll see that that you no longer have that gray box in U17. Since this video was originally recorded, an additional set of configuration values have been added here in column L to control a timer that will automatically go off periodically to update prices. You set the timer on and off here in cell L1, and then you can associate a beep each time the timer goes off through this value in L2, and then how often the timer goes off in minutes is set here in L3. You can also quickly turn the timer on and off by simply clicking on cell O1. So for instance, when I click on O1, that toggles the timer on, and you can see that initially it'll go out and update prices, and then once it's updated the price, it'll then show that the timer is on, and then how often the timer is set to go off again. And then if click on O1 again, it will turn the timer off. All right, so that's a quick overview on some ways you can go about configuring the SP5 Analyzer app. Thanks for watching.